The Canadian Housing Statistics Program just published data on residential real estate investors and investment properties. The report is giving us trends, percentage of owners that are investors, and lots more. Let's dive into this data that just came out. My name is Roch St-Georges. I'm a real estate broker in Ottawa. I help families and individuals with the purchase, sale, or rental of real estate in our city. Now, this is the first report by the Canadian Housing Statistics Program. Some of the previous data we had on home ownership and the proportion of investors in Canada was in the 2021 census. This showed us that the proportion of Canadian households who own their own home fell from 69% in 2011 to 66.5% in 2021. There have also been studies by the Bank of Canada, TerraNet, and CMHC on the same subject. The report from CHSP follows a different approach by identifying properties owned by investors among the entire stock of residential properties in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Ontario, Manitoba, and British Columbia during 2020. It shows us that in those provinces, more than 1 in 5 owners were investors in 2020. Nova Scotia was the province with the highest number of investors at 31.5% of properties. Then we had New Brunswick with 29% of properties. Here in Ontario, we had 20.2% of properties which were owned by investors. The report notes that the difference in the rate of investments between the Atlantic provinces and the rest of Canada is largely due to a higher proportion of vacant land ownership in these provinces. 6.7% of residents in Nova Scotia and 7.7% of residents in New Brunswick own 1 or 2 pieces of vacant land in addition to their primary residence. Removing this type of investor, the rate of investors in these provinces falls to 24.8% and 21.3%, making it more comparable to other provinces. In this analysis, owners are divided into 3 categories: investors, investor-occupants, and non-investors. If we look at BC in the chart, we notice that it has 9.6% of properties owned by investor-occupants, the highest in all provinces. An owner is classified as an investor occupant if they own a single property with multiple residential units, one of which is their primary residence. For example, this category includes owners of houses with laneway units or basement suites, as well as owners of duplexes who live in one unit and rent out the other. In all cases, at least one unit is being occupied by the owner. Investor occupants are more common in British Columbia, where they made up 9.6% of owners. This higher proportion is mostly due to the composition of the housing stock, attributable to many residences with laneway units or basement suites among properties with multiple residential units. These kinds of properties were more likely to be occupied by the owner when compared to apartment buildings in BC and elsewhere. The analysis by property type found that investors were drawn more to condominium apartments than houses. Looking at all provinces, the share of houses used as an investment was 15.6%. By comparison, the figure was 39.4% for condominium apartments. The percentage varied from province to province. 22.6% of condos in New Brunswick were used as an investment, while 41.9% of condos in Ontario were used as an investment. The report did mention that although the share of condos used as an investment is high in Ontario at 41.9%, it was 36.2% for the Greater Toronto area. With the higher cost of real estate in the GTA, it does make sense to me that owners are not choosing this buy and hold investment strategy, as the financials are likely not as attractive as they used to be, despite the high rents. If you looked at my CMHC rental report video, you may remember that in October 2022, Ottawa had 28.7% of its condos rented out. Once again, lower than the provincial average of 41.9%. A regional study discovered that the percentage of houses utilized as an investment tended to be greater in touristic regions where there may be more cottages. For example, in Nova Scotia, more than 1 in 20 houses is used as an investment by a person living outside of the province or country. The report noted that Ontario was the province with the fewer out-of-province investors at 0.3%. They attribute this to the higher real estate prices when compared to less expensive provinces such as Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. Those had 2.3 and 1.6% of houses owned by out-of-province investors. While some investors rent out their investment properties, others may use it as a secondary residence. Properties located outside of large metropolitan areas and cities are more likely to be used as secondary or recreational properties, such as cottages, when the owners are residents of the province and only own one additional property outside of their region of the primary residence. Note that these properties may or may not have been rented. In Ontario, 11.1% of properties outside of the major centers were used as secondary residence or recreational properties. If you'd like to read the full report from the Canadian Housing Statistics Program, you can find it in the YouTube description. Thanks for listening. If you liked the video and want to be kept informed about the real estate market, both here and nationally, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. If you would like to discuss the sale, purchase, or rental of a property here in Ottawa, please reach out to me using the information below. Si vous aimeriez discuter d'achat, de vente ou bien de location de propriété, mes coordonnées sont à l'écran. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. Ciao.